Namaste. My name is Savita Enner, and this is a beginner's guide to growing a garden, flowers and vegetables in a cooler temperature of America. I was born in India, southern India, which is a very tropical place, and I assumed that I would grow my vegetables and flowers the same way my mother did in southern part of India, which is very, very different when you have like a feet of snow in January, February, right, or March, and then you are still getting frost nights in the month of April, and then your plants will die when the temperature dip down in the month of October and November. So the first thing you have to understand is your growing conditions. If you give your zip code on the Google and ask for what is my growing zone, what is my garden growing zone, it will give you a number. The number will be somehow like 5A, 5B, 3B, 7A, 6A, something like that. So that will determine as to what are the things you will be able to successfully grow, what are the things you can grow with a little bit of assistance, what are the things you would probably will not have a lot of success and you probably might avoid if you are a beginner gardener. Okay, so as a beginner gardener, this is one of the most important thing to remember. What is my growing zone? So once you found out your growing zone, my growing zone used to be 6A, 6B, but because of global warming, we have updated now to like a 6B, 7 here in Maryland, in America. Okay, so that's the thing. So you got your growing zone, and the second thing you have to know, where do you want to garden? What is the available space for you? Is it a balcony? Is it a patio? Is it a small patch of grass or a land you have available? Depending on what is the available land you have to scale or plan your garden. The first important thing to know once you kind of have an idea on a garden is the availability of sunlight. According to me, one of the things which determine the success of the things I grow is what plants I grow in full sunlight versus the plants I grow where it doesn't get a lot of sunlight. So sunlight is one of the things which helps you become a successful gardener. So identify where is that you get the maximum amount of sunlight. What is the ideal hours of sunlight you should get? Anywhere between 8 to 10. Sorry about my dirty hands. I was reading and decided to make this video. So what is the temperature, what is the number of hours you should get? About anywhere between 8 to 10 hours. 6 hours is still good, 8 hours is still good. 8 hours is actually good. Anything above 6 to 8 hours is a bonus. Okay, so like actually where I'm sitting, the sun comes here. We get about, in the heat of summer, we get more than 10 hours of sunlight easily. So like the sun comes up at 6 and then probably goes down at 8, 9 o'clock during the heat of the summer. So we do get plenty of sunlight where I am sitting. So there are things which will be successful if I grow in full sunlight. Things like tender herbs and stuff will not like if I grow them in full sunlight. But a lot of plants actually like more sunlight, at least vegetables and fruits, what we tend to eat. Okay, so that's one. So kind of see how much of sunlight you get. If you're on a balcony, try to see how many hours of sunlight do you get in your balcony. If it's your patio, how many hours of sunlight do you get in your patio? If it's a patch of land you're trying to grow your things on, how much do you get? That's first thing which you have to pay attention to is the condition in which the plants will be growing in. That will be compost, potting soil, manure, fertilizer, sand, earth, whatever that is, that will, because that is the medium in which the plants are going. So the healthier the soil, the healthier the plant will be. And I will list down, if you're doing gardening in pots and containers, which are the brands which I recommend, and I'm very limited, by the way. I consider myself still a beginner and not an expert. So I will list down the companies I think that you will be successful in. It also depends on your budget. Some of them are more expensive than the others. What I do for my own garden is, when we started this garden like 7 years ago, this is like this house we moved in 7 years ago, and since then I've been gardening in this house. That's our neighbor. So when we started growing in this garden, the first thing we did was like put as much of compost as possible. That way we get a lot of leaf. The leaf were put in so that they can break down and then become compost. We also compost a lot of organic material from our kitchen. We have a composting bin, so that also gets in. We actually get compost from our neighbor who really doesn't garden but compost for environmental reasons, so we also get compost from her. But I've also bought ton of compost from the store, whether it is a bagged compost or a bulk compost. I have gotten in several places. So the first thing is to have like a good growing medium. Okay, so that's like the second thing. You have to sunlight, then the growing medium, access to a good quality growing medium. I recommend a combination of, if you plant putting them in a planter, like a good potting soil which has lots of nutrients, and the second thing, if you have a garden, lots of compost, which is kind of like, let me see if I can turn it on. Oh yeah, there you go. Oh, nice. Like, you know, which is like loose. This has a lot of like leaf, and it has a lot of like loose soil, so the roots can go in easily, and also the roots can grow easily. It's a fluffier soil. The fluffier soil, the roots can grow easily, and the plant will become nice and healthy. So that's the second thing. The third thing you have to is like water or humidity, right? You know, the retention of the water. It's not important that you just water the plants, but do your soil is retaining the water. For example, if you have a pot and then you pour the water, and the water drains away very quickly without really holding on to anything in the pot, that means you pour the water, it is leaving. So the water is not being retained from the plant. So you might want to put like something like a saucer, or like something to catch, like a plate which can be sitting, the pot can be sitting on, so it will retain. But a good way is, if you have a good quality soil, it allows it retains the moisture. One of the examples I can give you is this. Okay, this is not perfect example that I'm just going to give you. For example, this is like, you know, this has lots of leaves. It has like some mulch, and it has some soil. When I plant something, when I water my garden, right, the leaf will also become wet, the mulch also becomes wet, the soil also becomes wet. When the sun hits the ground, when it begins to evaporate, first the leaf has to become dry, the mulch has to become dry, then the soil becomes dry. That means there is a chance that the water retention is high when there is a lot of organic matter in your soil which holds the water for a very long time. That's one of the reasons gardeners recommend mulching with different materials in your garden. Okay, so that's like sunlight, growing medium, and water. The ability of your plant or the planter or the ground to hold water. Too much water, the roots will rot. Too less water, the plant will, they will not be as successful. But I will say this, people kill more plant by over watering than actually watering less. Okay, so that's something to know. So these are the three different things which you have to completely be aware when you're starting a new garden. Okay, once you have these basic things down, now let's talk about what should you be growing, right? When you think about flowers and vegetables, it doesn't matter whether flowers and vegetables, whatever you're trying to grow, there will be some plants which like to grow and thrive in cooler temperature, and there are some plants which like to grow and thrive in warmer temperature. Okay, so if like me, I'm in Maryland, which is like 6B7 in a zone. In my area, I am actually very, very successful growing spring crops and fall crops more than my summer crops, because we have a more cooler temperature months than we have warm temperature months. This is just my experience. I could be wrong, but this is my experience. Also, there are insects are less, pests are less during the winter, cold spring and fall weather. That is one of the reasons also, like, all these insects you see during the summer, like flying away, and then lots of pest buzzers, that is a little less during the spring and fall. It doesn't mean that we don't have any, but we have very, very less to fight against. So one of the reasons, one of the reasons I like actually gardening in spring and fall. Okay. So when you are growing the cooler temperature, what are the cooler temperature? First you have to make a list of the things which like growing in cooler temperature. In my opinion, lots of herbs like your cilantro, parsley, and cilantro, parsley, I cannot think of others which are very good, are good for in cooler temperatures, but lots of vegetables like all the greens, pretty much all the greens. There is not a lot of greens which thrive in the heat of the summer for me. Maybe Malabar spinach, which is basle sappu we call in Canada. That one kind of takes some heat. So it forms some seed heads and stuff, but it still survives. But the rest of the greens become very bitter, actually not taste very good when I plant them in the summer. So I like growing greens during fall and during spring. And I can list all the things which we grow, like kale, Swiss chard, collard greens, lots of different types of mustard, methi, spinach, and all the root vegetables like beetroot, potatoes, radishes, different types of radishes, carrots. These love cooler weather. Apart from that, also peas, sweet peas, snap peas, all of them. Matar, what we call batani matar, that is very, it's a cool weather crop. So these are the things which will be successful if I grew them in cooler temperature. If I waited them for the peak of summer, I'm usually not successful. But if I start growing my tomatoes, my peppers in the cooler temperature like March or April, they'll never survive because I have tried it. Home Depot and Lowe's will start selling seedlings during the month of March and April, and you bring them home. They look very nice in the store, and then you bring them home and you put them on the patio, and then you will see that die in a couple of weeks if they did survive for miraculous reasons, but they tend to not do very well because it is just too early in our area to be growing these peppers and tomatoes and eggplants and cucumbers and zucchini and pumpkins, all those things. We have to wait until May. Mother's Day is a good day for me. Okay, so that's kind of like what it is. You have to identify what you're growing, whether they're a cool weather crop or whether they're hot weather crop. How do you know this information? One is to just Google. You whatever you are trying to grow, you just Google the name and see what is the best time of the year for them to be growing. That will give you a lot of information. You don't have to go in the circular pattern of like trying to find a lot of information. Just the basic of information. What is the ideal temperature and where does when does it harvest and how many days does it take to grow and mature and harvest. So these are the basics of gardening. What zone are you gardening, sunlight you're going to get, the medium in which you're going to grow, your humidity or water level, and knowing the differentiation between cool weather and hot weather crops, cool weather and warm weather crops. So this is kind of like a full information, and I will post more videos as we progress as to what are the things you should be doing in January, what are the things you should be doing in February, what are the things you should be doing in March as we go along our journey. So today is 26 January 2024, and I'll keep you updated.